Hi, it's Arlette Lazarenko with The Signal. There's a lot of talk about the federal election, but what are you not hearing? What are some issues that matter to you that you want us to cover as we head to the polls? You can email us at thesignal@cbc.ca.
Tuesday, March 25th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, we're talking about the federal election, specifically what folks are watching for. My guests have backgrounds in political science, geography, sociology, anthropology, all here to talk federal election campaigns. Taking a little look at cbc.ca/news. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Politics is in the news. Imagine that. Top headline right now, Poilievre takes questions about his lack of security clearance in election campaign spotlight. Another subhead there for another story, Carney slams Poilievre's quote-unquote irresponsible lack of security clearance. Another story, canceled debate steals the campaign show from taxes and housing. So this is after yesterday's news, right? So that's that TVA French debate that Mark Carney said he would not participate in. Anyways, that's a flavor of some of the headlines that are coming in. We're talking federal election campaign, and the question I'll be asking through the whole of the campaign, folks, for you sitting at home or driving your cars or whatever you're doing while you listen to us. What are your thoughts? What are you not hearing? What is something that matters to you? Get in touch with us anytime. The Signal at cbc.ca, or you can leave a message on the Signal line, 709-576-5260. We'll open the phone lines in the second half of the show today with the question of what are you watching for? Let me get to my guests. We've got Kelly Blidook, political science professor, Yolande Pottie-Sherman, prof with the Department of Geography and chair of Child Care Now N.L, Rochelle Côté, sociologist with the Department of Sociology and Faculty of Business Administration, and Whitaker, anthropologist, also vice president of the Canadian Association of University Teachers. Folks, thanks for coming in.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Fun to be here.
All right, so full house. I don't even know where to look. I'll look at the political scientist. This is the time for you folks. Political scientist, Kelly?
Yes. Elections are fun. They're the opportunity to kind of see how everything, when the rubber hits the road, this is where it happens, right? It determines who governs. It shows us a little bit about what people are thinking, how people are engaging. And under the circumstances, I cannot say that I've ever seen anything quite as interesting or volatile as what we're currently observing. So on top of, sometimes elections aren't super fun. I think this one is super fun.
There's a lot. All right. Well, we'll go. There's lots to dig in. I mean, each of you could be your own shows, but you're all together, and we're going to share the time for shows. What's top of mind for the start, the kickoff of the campaign, Rochelle?
I mean, I know that a couple of things that I'm kind of watching for as I'm listening to candidates and looking out on the landscape of political parties in this country. I'm looking for clear message and a vision of what each party wants for Canada. And this might surprise people, but I'm also looking for a bit of an understanding in terms of where these stories begin in terms of some of these large national conversations that we're having around, for me, Indigenous rights, but also immigration and this bigger, exercise of multiculturalism that we've been engaged in for a while. I guess for me, for the second one, everybody has their idea of where the story should start, where our understanding of these issues is going to start, and I never find that politicians necessarily start far enough back. So those are kind of two of the things that I'm watching.
All right. Yolande, what about yourself?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, I wear a few hats. I'm the chair of Child Care Now Newfoundland and Labrador, which is an advocacy organization devoted to advocating for better childcare options across the country and Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm an academic who's interested in how we build sustainable communities, and I'm also a parent of a preschool-aged child, so I understand the firsthand role of childcare in our communities. And so the thing that's, I think, I'm sort of waiting with bated breath is just the future of Canada's National Childcare Plan. And I really think people may not understand just how much it is in the balance, even though all of the talk so far has been on Trump and the tariffs and the trade war. At the end of the day, if the Conservatives form a majority government, the fate of $10 a day childcare it doesn't look so bright, right? So I'm really watching to see, the Conservative Party has not come out with a platform yet. They haven't said exactly what they want to do with the National Child Care Plan. We know that Carney has said he's committed to keeping the transfers going to the provinces and territories, but there are a lot of warning signals that have been put out by the Conservatives as to where they want the policy to go.
Why, and this is a really dumb question, why is childcare so important for our communities and having sustainable, thriving communities?
Totally. And I think there's a lot of answers to that, but I want to talk about the economics of it. I think it's really important. We're fighting a trade war, and really having childcare that's affordable, inclusive, and high quality is our front line of defense. Essentially, there's huge workforce implications. So if you're a two-parent family and one person has to stay home because you can't find a childcare space, and virtually everybody that doesn't work full-time because they can't find childcare is the woman in the relationship. Those are people that don't enter the workforce, right? We don't want to have our troops in this tariff battle. We want to make sure that everyone can work if they want to. So we know since 2019, we've already added 110,000 more women in the workforce as a result of $10 a day childcare. So there's a workforce angle that's really important. There's all of the spillover effects that come from building this big, lofty vision of having childcare available to every family across Canada, regardless of where they live. That's building the centres, all of the impacts of buying toys, all of that is part of the economy, adding jobs in early learning and childcare. So we've added 40,000 jobs in the childcare workforce. So there's a million different economic reasons why this is really important. And we know that for every dollar that we spend, governments get back $6, between $1 and $6, right? So you're putting money into the economy. It costs money to do this, but then you get money back in terms of income tax revenue and spending in the economy.
Robin Whitaker.
Thanks. Well, like Yolande, I also have multiple hats that I wear. I'll say on the broad picture, as Kelly said, this is an incredibly volatile situation. We're facing challenges that we have not seen before. And, this election, I think, largely is about who's best placed to stand up to Trump. It's going to require some elevated seriousness of a kind we haven't been seeing as much as we need in politics generally. I think now, just to riff off a little bit, the childcare comments, we're facing a similar situation in public post-secondary. The sector is incredibly challenged right now. Some of that has come from federal policy changes related to the number of visas offered to international students, but really what they just revealed an underlying problem, which is decades of underfunding of public post-secondary education right across the country. And I think, just as is the case with childcare, public post-secondary education is essential infrastructure to any made-in-Canada solution to the issues that we're facing right now. So, any new industrial plan is going to need post-secondary education, colleges and universities, and it's going to need them to be supported adequately. There's lots more I can say about how Trump is messing with post-secondary education at the moment, and I will, when I get a chance. Some people may have heard of a questionnaire that's gone out to any researchers in Canada who are getting funding from federal U.S. sources, and it's really, really wild. But I'll
we can go into that, and then because what I'll do is we'll go into that, and I'll branch out for that that elephant living next door to us for everyone else's thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think this is really indicative of the situation we're in. Last week, the Canadian Association of University Teachers was alerted to the fact that researchers across the country had been sent a questionnaire with questions including things like, can you confirm that there's no DEI project or DEI elements in the project? Can you confirm your organization, so presumably your university or college, does not work with entities associated with communist, socialist, or totalitarian parties, or any party that espouses anti-American beliefs? There's questions relating to climate and climate justice and environment. And so, this has really exposed the extent to which the Trump administration, they're not reliable partners anymore on international trade. They're not reliable partners on international diplomacy. And now we're seeing that the government is undermining international collaboration in research. And this is really serious. And we need our politicians to stand up and say, we are not going to stand for this. Research will be protected in Canada. We understand that political interference is unacceptable, and we will make sure that that academics and scientists have the wherewithal to continue their research here.
Have we heard any politicians stand up and say this yet?
We have not heard that explicitly, but I think we do have to be worried. Yolande mentioned the Conservatives. They have a record of attacking experts, attacking evidence, attacking individual scientists, including, I'm afraid, Pierre Poilievre, who has described some researchers as wacko if their arguments don't line up with his particular political stances. And those kinds of personal attacks are really chilling to people.
The Americans with the administration, so we've got the academic side of it and questions around it. What else are we following? Kelly, what are you, like for yourself on the political science side of it?
Sure. So I'd say a couple of things that stand out for me. So I don't really consider myself an advocate in terms of being an academic, but if I do advocate for anything, I would say it's for democracy. So I think what we're seeing south of the border is a diminishment of democracy, and so that's a big concern. And I think that extends beyond to basic rights. So thinking of LGBTQ+, our department actually put out a statement a short while ago to ensure that our students understood that we are on side with them and we are advocates, we're allies. There's so many things that feel like they could really go wrong because of the Trump administration in the U.S. And I guess the concern is around sort of the spillover effect or the emboldening of certain perspectives that really put vulnerable people in bad positions. And so that extends, again, not just to the rights of all people, but also to our democratic rights. So I think the key things we should be looking for here are affirmations from all political parties that they believe in the equality of all people. And beyond that they are going to not only maintain democratic institutions. This is actually, not to get into sort of a partisan thing, you don't have a wide range of ideological perspectives at this table. I'll just point that out.
So I mean, you're all university professors from next door, sure.
Yeah, we're all in the same union. So there's a lot of similarities. I think we do have different perspectives on a lot of things, but I don't want to sit here and crap on the Conservatives, but I would say that when he was Democratic Minister for Democratic Reform, Pierre Poilievre presented multiple risks to Canadian democracy, and I haven't seen that get any attention in the time that he's been leader. But the Fair Elections Act that he presented to Parliament was widely regarded as the Unfair Elections Act by a number of experts, including myself. So these are the sorts of questions that I think we do have to have around who's going to lead the country. But beyond just the risks, I think what we should be looking for is for our leaders to affirm that they want to strengthen democracy in Canada and tell us how they're going to do it.
And what kinds of questions do you have of like a technocrat like Mark Carney coming in, who's been, comes in unelected now, which is a unique position. Granted, yes, this is how the system works, but comes in, gets the leadership, and then is in for like 9-10 days, calls the election. What are concerns around him?
Well, So it definitely is a shift. I think the biggest issue really is that Canadians don't really know who Mark Carney is. He comes in obviously with a to the extent that any of us know his CV, it looks good. It looks like it fits. It fits for the time frame. We're concerned about economics. We're concerned about Trump, and it looks like he's got sort of these basic credentials. But at the same time, we're going to learn who this person is. It's not clear that a month is enough time. The flip side of that is, how long would you want him to be prime minister, have him leading the parliament in terms of legislation and so on? I mean, I think they had to go to an election quickly. I don't think there's really any way around that. So I don't want to sit here and put off major warning bells, except to say that this is someone that we don't know, and it'd be nice to know more about them. And I really hope that he goes, hearing about him turning down debates, this is concerning. I can understand why he chose a French debate to not attend, because he's terrible at French. But I think he should be accepting and showing us every opportunity he gets. I'd like to know more about him, and those are opportunities to do it. So it's disconcerting that he's turning down opportunities to
the
give us
TVA
more
debate,
information.
right? And because that's known as like a fast-moving, like you've got to be on your toes type of debate. And then so if your French is not up to perhaps a certain level, it could be scary for you. But regardless, as Yves-François Blanchet was kind of poking at him, it's like, look, you want to go up against Donald Trump, you're scared to come to a debate in Quebec with me.
Yeah, it's a funny wild card to kind of, that's going to be, there will be volatility around the vote in Quebec, how Mark Carney can, because he has done well there so far, but to see what he can do with it, if I was strategizing about any French debates with Mark Carney, it would be to use big words and to talk fast and to see how he can do with it, because he's shown that he's not capable of it so far.
And before I go back to the rest of the room, last question though, the polls have really turned around since before January, and you can take the polls for what you will, but it's not looking great for the NDP as of the recent polls with the popularity for Jagmeet Singh. What are your thoughts as to where things are at as this race shapes up?
It's not that surprising to see the Conservatives and Liberals becoming the default parties when the main issues are economy, national unity, and national security. I feel bad for Jagmeet Singh, but I don't think it's whether it's him or anybody else. That's really hard for the NDP to shine when those are the main issues. They don't own any of those issues, and they don't have an avenue to owning any of them. So it puts them in a very difficult position. It's possible there are strategies that they could use to try to stand out, but they will have challenges because their support also comes from unions in Ontario. It's pretty hard to kind of take on a fully isolationist approach to the U.S. or something that might kind of stand out a bit compared to other parties. But anyway, sorry, on the full range, it's not really surprising to me that we've really become sort of conservative, liberal. These are the main parties that have governed. We're going to be deciding between them.
All right. Rochelle, any thoughts, whether it's jumping off of what Kelly was saying or also just on the American zeitgeist that we're kind of thinking about for the federal election campaign?
I mean, how can we not be thinking about the impact of Trump and the U.S. in our election? And, I keep trying to focus, and I think it's important as Canadians that we try to focus on the issues that are really Canada-made issues. But just as one example, because I do take a very serious interest in Indigenous sovereignty, Indigenous self-determination, impact to economy, all of these other sorts of things here in our country. We've decided a number of years ago that the exercise of reconciliation, but also the recognition of Indigenous peoples as nations that exist within this context. And so because of that, I take a very serious interest in not only looking at what our politicians are doing in terms of trying to honor that commitment that really was birthed a number of years ago, but I'm also looking at what's happening in the U.S. And so, colleagues, they've pointed out other such things that are troubling about the erosion of democracy down in the States and other sorts of things, diversity, challenges to diversity, equity, inclusion, all these sorts of things. But the one thing that kind of caught my attention was that Trump signed an executive order earlier this month rescinding an executive order that was passed by Biden, I think just last year, that was rolling back tribal sovereignty rights and self-determination efforts as well. And this rolling back and this executive order that Trump has signed is impacting 574 federally recognized tribes in the states and calling into question their ability to govern themselves. And so, when we kind of look at what's happening in Canada right now, I think I mentioned the last time I was on, or maybe not, but here in Canada, we see off on the West Coast, we have the Haida, who have just recently been given stewardship over Haida Gwaii. This just happened last month.
Yeah.
We see modern day treaties that are being signed with Métis Nation of Manitoba, here on the island of Newfoundland with Qalipu Nation. So we have all of these different examples and commitments to these things that, when we look at not only the erosion of democratic rights in the states, we're also seeing an erosion of the right to self-determine and the right to sovereignty of Native American tribes in the states as well. And so, to my mind, that's another thing, that when we look at what it means to be Canadian, which I think is a question all of your listeners, and we should all be asking ourselves, what is it that makes us Canadian? What is it that we value, and what is the foundation or fundamental to our identity as Canadians? And to my mind, one of these things is, in fact, our recognition of Indigenous peoples in this country as partners. That is a pretty bold statement. I think Canada in some ways has a really far ways to go. But, First Nations, Indigenous peoples in this country contribute roughly $50 billion to our GDP. We have about 634 recognized First Nations, along with Inuit and Métis nations in this country as well. Some of the fastest growing populations in this country. So there's a lot there that we really need to continue focusing on and investing in, if we are thinking about, economic advantage and what we want to do in order to make us the strongest country as possible. I mean, that's just one of the things that I don't know, fall asleep thinking of.
Robin.
Yeah, I'll come in on that. I think your question, we're in this moment where we have a chance to ask ourselves not only, what we are, but what we want to be as a country. And I think I said that this is a time that calls for seriousness of a sort that we haven't, unfortunately, been seeing enough of in politics recently. It's also a time that requires imagination. I think we do face really significant challenges. I mean, Trump is a really immediate one, but sorry, some entertainment in the studio.
Kelly's have some chair problems.
Yes. That comes on top of climate change, healthcare, housing, affordability issues. People are understandably anxious right now about their jobs, and we have a chance to say, this is going to be a country that looks at where we look after each other, or we can say, oh, let's get rid of barriers to interprovincial trade, even if that means getting rid of the kinds of regulations that protect people and the environment. When it comes to, for instance, post-secondary education, we're talking about a federal election. Someone might say, well, why are you talking about education that's in the provincial jurisdiction? We've seen that it can work with childcare. As Yolande mentioned, bilateral agreements between the federal and provincial governments have worked very well in providing affordable childcare. So, I think this really is a moment where we have an opportunity to say, let's take stock here. What kind of country do we want Canada to be? So, while there are many challenges, there are also some real opportunities. And I think also not to accept the sort of stock framing, jobs versus the environment, for example. Often what we're talking about there is short-term versus long-term. We're all going to pay if we don't attend to climate issues in this country. We're seeing it already in Alberta, where wildfires are becoming part of the annual weather report. those things, though, they cost, and they're going to continue to cost, and we need to pay attention to them. And of course, putting on my CAUT hat again, post-secondary education is going to be central to addressing all those issues, and including some of the ones that are coming under fire by, unfortunately, the Trump regime.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on something Robin said, which I think is like one of the greatest tragedies, is that at a time when we could be capitalizing on many talented people from the United States wanting to leave the United States and come to Canada, our universities are in shambles economically, right? So, we can't recruit the best scientists from the United States because there are no positions open, right?
Yeah, there's no budgets for it.
There's no budget, right? This is a really missed opportunity, and I think people really need to start thinking about that.
Folks, you're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. The phone lines are open if we're just opening them, cracking them open if you want to join this conversation. What are you watching for in the federal election campaign? 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. We had a call lined up before the show. Chief Jenny Brake, Qalipu First Nation, is on the line. Hi, Chief Brake. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show. What are the issues that you're thinking about when it comes to the federal election?
Well, we're looking forward to hearing from all the candidates from the federal election. We've had some outreach now, which is really great, but we look forward to hearing them all. We don't want to chase them down. We want to know that they're interested in talking to us. As the last province to join Canada, I don't think there's really a solid relationship that exists yet between Canada and Newfoundland. The Indigenous people here, there's not a real true understanding of who we are and what our needs are. So I look forward to a strengthened relationship between us and the federal government. There's a lot going on in our province, especially around industry development. And, there's not a clear understanding of, what the approach is when you come to Newfoundland to do industry development. Who do you talk to? And I think that the guidelines right now are really too gray, and they need to be tightened up. So there's a lot of things that we're really hoping to see with the new government. We certainly don't want to see a decline in engagement or the relationship that exists right now. I think Justin Trudeau did a good job of approaching truth and reconciliation. He paved a road and he got us started, but whoever comes in next needs to be committed to following through on that and really building on that, because it's just a very slow start as it stands.
So then what are some of the immediate first steps that you would like to see under the next federal government on that road to truth and reconciliation?
Well, boots to ground. Come see us, meet us, because far too often we're having to go to Ottawa to talk to folks. And, if you really need to, if you're servicing any community, you need to get out there. You need to understand the needs of the people. You need to meet them. So, we'd like to see more folks in our community coming to meet us, to talk to us about our concerns, to get to know the landscape. Most people that come to Newfoundland don't even realize that you just can't possibly see it all in one day. I've picked people up from the airport in Deer Lake, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to go to Labrador later." So, a lot of folks that come here just don't understand how vast it is, and they're really blown away by when they realize how large our First Nation is. But it's non-original bands across a massive landscape put together under one umbrella. So and it's us and Mi'kmaq here on the island in Conn River as the Mi'kmaq nations on the island, and we're just trying our best to really establish ourselves and grow, because we are new to this, and we want Canada to have the opportunity to get to know us and to really foster that relationship and see the benefit of working with the First Nations here.
So you mentioned looking forward to candidates getting in touch with you. Has anyone gotten in touch yet? I know we're early days, but the campaign's not overly a long one. So has anyone given you a ring so far?
Yes, we've heard from both PC and Liberal candidates, and it's really great to hear them reaching out and wanting to get to know us. We haven't had a lot of engagement yet, but just the fact that the first step is being taken, it leaves us feeling hopeful, because that means that they understand that the importance of working with us. Because when I don't hear from a candidate, that tells me we're not on the radar, and that leaves us really concerned.
Yeah, and not to go into the details of those conversations, but if you've got the Conservative candidate, the Liberal candidate getting in touch, was it just what type of a call was it? Was it them phoning, just asking what are your concerns, or what type of what was the flavor of the conversation?
Just touching base.
Okay. Yeah.
Not really getting into anything meaningful yet, so we're still waiting for that. One in particular has been a little more engaged than the other, I'll say that. We don't want photo ops. We're not here to show up and get in the photographs, so you can tick a box. We are not a box to be ticked. We need you to come and sit down with us and get to know us. So if anyone is out there listening, we really hope to hear from you soon in a meaningful way.
Chief Jenny Brake, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come back on the Signal. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Chief Jenny Brake there, Qalipu First Nation. Any thoughts about what Chief Brake was saying? Go for it, Rochelle.
I mean, I think, what I was saying before Chief Jenny called in, really just echoing those sentiments again, right? Yeah,
no, exactly, right. It was all there. So, I mean, you did a great way of paving the road for it, and then Chief Brake came on, and it's interesting to hear that a couple candidates have been in touch, right? And we'll just see, because there's a long road for the election campaign. As folks working on a university on campus, what are students saying around the federal election, or what's the engagement like? And that could be whether it's from the looking at the Trump administration to the election coming up. What's it like being on campus right now?
I'll just say it tends to be very Trump-focused. I don't think there's any real way around it. I think students, these are the sorts of things that, at least in political science, I would imagine these things feel a little bit more shocking. They sort of strike at the heart of what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. But yeah, I don't actually hear a lot from my students in terms of the specific parties. Okay. Certainly they come up in conversations in class as we start to use examples and stuff like that. But for me, it's not sort of a galvanizing a particular approach to who to vote for. More so, it's usually more generally focused around U.S. politics.
I can say that students in my class want to know how I'm going to vote.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
And I will never, ever divulge that information to a classroom of students, because it's sort of, as Kelly rightly points out, it's not my job to tell students how to vote. It's my job to give them good information, accurate, clear, real, data-driven information about the issues and what's going on. And so the course that I'm teaching right now is a course on ethnic relations in Canada. And typically, the course unfolds as it will. We talk about immigration, we talk about Indigenous peoples, we talk about the treaty process, we talk about how it is that we have come to the point that we are today. But ever since mid-January, and that kind of, not the first time Trump mentioned Canada as a 51st state, probably about the third or fourth time he mentioned it. Trump has had a part in my class conversations these days. I mean, it's a forum for students to ask questions, and again, to give them an opportunity to try to figure out where it is, that this is all going. I don't actually know, outside of the university classroom setting, I don't know where students get an opportunity to try to talk about all of this stuff and try to have, good information that is coming back to them to try to help them understand everything.
Yolande.
Yeah, so I'm teaching a course on global migration right now, so it's not a hot topic at all. And the students are just so tapped in. I just ran over here because my class ends at 11:45, so I ran over. They were presenting their final research papers, policy brief presentations on border security and asylum geography. So just really excellent and strong command of all of the issues. And it's difficult, right? I'm asking them to write policy briefs, and then they hand their paper in. Between the time they go to hand it in and present, things have changed, right? Yeah. So things are changing so fast. I just try to keep up with it as best as I can. But sometimes I feel like I go to my classroom and I just spend 15 minutes just reading them the news. Here's this thing that happened. Remember how we talked about border externalization? Well, now we're seeing that, with Trump putting people on planes and sending them to whatever country will take people. So yeah, it's just it's hard to keep up, and I have to say I've been so impressed with the students this term because we had an opportunity to have a guest lecture by the Newfoundland and Labrador immigration minister, Sarah Studley. She came in and generously gave some time to the class, and they kept her up there in the hot seat for the entire class period.
Really?
So 75 minutes, they were like, question, 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 question. They had so many questions. And, you know, questions and answers. And so they're just, it's stressful. And the topic is more powerful and pressing to some students who obviously some are students that have refugee backgrounds or some of students, maybe have never left Newfoundland. So just the conversations are sensitive, and I've just been trying to do my best all term, really, to be honest with you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of pan out a little bit to talk about things that I think, you know, have been on students' minds even before this election, and which are really affordability issues. And you know, one of the things I think that's just going back to the question that Rochelle kind of initiated. You know, it used to be that that post-secondary education was quite affordable in Canada. That's no longer the case. And although Canadians still value post-secondary education, and we've done polling that shows that, you know, 8 out of 10 parents would recommend that their child enroll in college or university, and they see them as valuable and see, you know, post-secondary as valuable and essential for the country. 1 in 4 students have considered dropping out because of affordability issues, and 64% wouldn't be able to afford their education without help from their parents, and that, I think, shows we're not as egalitarian as we'd like to be. That's going to exacerbate existing inequalities. I have a nephew and a niece in university now, and, you know, they work part-time jobs. They're struggling to make ends meet and pay their tuition, and, you know, and they're in, you know, pretty good positions. So there's all those issues, and we're seeing increasing levels of debt. So I think, again, you know, this is coming on top of all the other issues that have been identified here. Of course, people are talking about, you know, they're kind of a bit shell-shocked, I think, like the rest of us, with the speed at which things are coming. But, you know, I don't think we should forget those kind of structural issues that are there for students and for families across the country. Because
it felt like it almost was going to be this big affordability election. You know, talking about anger over the carbon tax. You've got the Conservative Party calling it a lost decade. You had all this stuff coming, and then Donald Trump comes around. And even though that stuff is all still there, the cost of living crisis is there. We're talking about building the homes that still need to be built. Yet all of a sudden, this existential bit comes in. So how, for folks voting, like, what do you think gets them to the polls for this one? Do you think people will be paying attention to what are still big issues, but when you've got this overarching threat to sovereignty that is going on? Kelly Blidook, what do you think?
I mean, I think people are looking for. It's an interesting question because, yeah, you're coming around from, okay, so there are these issues and these issues, and what you know, they are all still sort of bound up in the original concern in some ways. I think people's concerns are substantially economic concerns. And the election of Trump for many people still just adds on to that, right? The idea that now my employment may be less stable, or that the employment around me and the economy around me is less stable. And so I think that's why it's actually really important, the way that we've been attempting to do so, I think, around this table so far, to recognize that's there. It's almost like that's a standard. Now we have to keep in mind that there are a number of other issues that are going on, and if we don't want these things to be lost. We don't want governments to come in and say, oh, so long as I'm dealing with Donald Trump and the tariffs get taken down, I've done what I was expected to do. I do think a lot of Canadians, that's really kind of where their heads are at. I think the key thing is to keep in mind that there are so many other battles that are being fought about democracy, about rights, about Indigenous issues, that are about our universities. I think the goal here is to keep all of these things going and to remind people that if you're engaged in politics, there's a lot to be engaged in and things to keep on your radar screen. That's all I can kind of say is that I think we just have to keep reminding people that there's a lot at stake, and you should be looking for a full package here, not just somebody who comes in and has run a central bank or somebody who comes in and says they're going to get rid of a tax.
Yeah, it's things are not just memes on Facebook with bullet points and funny faces, right? It's almost like there's more information to be found if you try to scratch the surface on it.
But look, I mean, I think the average person in Canada, that's about the bandwidth that they have when they get home from work at the end of the day. Right? They're going to go on Facebook, they're going to go on Twitter, and the first thing that's going to pop up is going to be a meme. I think the latest one I've seen is Mike Myers having a conversation with Mark Carney on the side of a hockey rink.
Yeah, the political ad. Myers has 51 on back, which says never or whatever, little joke at the end. Yeah, political ad.
And so those are the kind of things that when you're tired and you've got to feed the kids, or you've got to get them off to dance practice or do whatever, you're going to log in, you're going to see that's going to stick in your mind. And so, as a tactic to try to get people to the polls, the sovereignty issue is a really big thing right now. I have yet to buy my #elbows-up t-shirt, but, it might be coming.
And then we're assuming that these are like homegrown Canadian attitudes, but there are foreign powers actively stoking attitudes in Canada, especially in the area of immigration. So I just was at this really big conference in Toronto on, the future of Canada's immigration system. And one of the big themes of the conference was that there is active foreign interference in terms of driving and stoking negative attitudes towards immigration. We are seeing in Canada now 6 in 10 Canadians believe there's too much immigration. This is really, really alarming. They're increasingly likely to tie that to housing, but so obviously we have a housing crisis.
Because that's a narrative that's come out recently, but that's the narrative of recent months, right? Not enough housing, too many immigrants came in, it compounded the issue, and here we are voting.
Yeah, so it's that's all there as well, but these attitudes are also being stoked by other powers, right? So I think there's a lot there, and so this election, we have to see, is this the election where we draw a line in the sand and say we don't want to be the United States? No party wants to go down that road, and I think I have some optimism around that. I think everybody's talking about the need for sort of a turning point in Canadian immigration policy, and whether that looks like shifting towards recruiting people who are doing jobs like plumber rather than data scientist, right? There's these big existential questions that I think no matter what party gets in is going to have to deal with.
Folks, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. We're asking, what are you watching for this federal election campaign? Let's go to Mr. Richard Whitaker is on the line, calling from Portugal Cove, who is also the father of one of our guests. Hi, Mr. Whitaker. How you doing?
Oh, well, so. Yeah, that's a different story.
Oh, and sir, my condolences there.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm making an observation, not quite exactly on topic, but every time someone mentions one of the things in the White House, they blow up like balloons. They don't care whether it's bad or good or whatever. It's notice me. And unfortunately, within our federal election now, it's hard to avoid that. And I have no useful suggestions to make as to how to avoid it, but I will say this, that in the past, I think you would know, the Japanese had a method to deal with people like those people. They turned their backs on them.
Yeah.
Would I be right about that?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, from just thinking back to some of my previous history. Yeah, that sounds just about right. There's there's a few different things in on that one.
And I don't think this is particularly helpful to your conversation, but I think it is. That is the problem. We keep, it doesn't matter which radio station, news, whatever, they keep getting mentioned, and they lap it up.
Yeah, it just feeds itself, hey? Yeah, no, I think you're
They
right
feed
on
off it. And in a sense, turning our backs on them does apply. We need to turn our backs on the states as much as we can in terms, as many people have said, in terms of our own industries and so forth. And we do have materials that people want in other countries, plus becoming more self-sufficient. Manufacturing here is one of the major things we must move back towards, which we did in the past. And I'd remind people that we used to have a really significant aircraft manufacturing industry and some of the best airplanes in the world. And I think that, most of that was stolen by the states.
I've got a very great panelist here, Robin Whitaker, who wants to weigh in on this. Go ahead, Robin.
Right. Thanks, Dad.
I didn't realize you were on, Robin.
Yeah. Well, I will say, just on the question of attention, I think attention has become a commodity now, and people are competing for it. There's some really interesting research being done on that. It's not unrelated to the polarization that we're seeing in politics as well. And there was a really interesting article in a magazine, The Atlantic, recently called I've forgotten the title, but basically the solo century, the isolated century, about the way in which we're closer than ever to the people that are closest to us. And we also get access to our tribe, if you like, through social media and so on. But we aren't mixing with people who might have different views than we do on an everyday basis, because so much of life now is lived in this mediated way. I would also say, just on Kelly's point, and I know we have slight disagreement on some of this, Kelly and I, our electoral system doesn't allow for much nuance when it comes to voting. And we did the previous Trudeau came in on a promise of this will be the last election run under first past the post. He didn't keep that promise. I have actually voted in proportional representation elections and studied them in my research. And they really allow for a different kind of decision making when you go to the polls. And they allow you not simply to vote against something, but to vote for it in the secure knowledge that your vote will count. We don't have that system, and it tends to push us, again, to a starker set of choices, I think. And, that may be part of the equation, what Kelly was saying about where people are thinking about putting their votes right now, that sense that if I vote in one way, it may be a wasted vote. And, so I think it's not going to be, it's not going to be a major feature of this election, I think. But as we think about where we're going, I do think if we think about democratic reform, we need a real conversation about what is enabled by different forms of electoral democracy.
Mr. Whitaker, thanks so much for your call, and I look forward to hearing from you, as always, for any show we do. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Great call. Always enjoy Mr. Whitaker's calls out of Portugal Cove. That's the thing with the election here, right? Like, if you like your local candidate, but you don't like their party, or vice versa, or whatever else, first past the post doesn't really get us there. And there were promises to change it, and it didn't happen. But here we are again with another election. Like, the other bit I've noticed around this, for like the Carney stuff I mentioned earlier, right? I saw some folks be upset for how that, like, even though that's how our system works. What does it take for getting more understanding around our political system, to get more engagement, and even to have the conversation of changing how we have our system to something different, whether with proportional representation? Do you find it, like, what are your thoughts on just that, like the discussion around changing the system, or getting folks to even understand the current system and how it works, and the lacks of understanding that might be out there?
Well, I would say they should enroll in political science courses.
Hey, I did. I mean, that was me, part of my degree, poli-sci. I don't want to talk about my grades, maybe off after the show.
And yeah, I mean, Robin alluded to it. I have mixed feelings about proportional representation, but I would absolutely agree that it's a conversation that should have happened. This is something I've disliked Trudeau very much for a long time, because he opened the door to it and then he made it sort of a weird tease on everybody. If you're going to talk about democratic reform, I'd prefer that you take it seriously, show up at the table and let us know what it's about, and he didn't do that. But I think more generally, yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say I think it's important that people do what they can to understand our system, how it works, why it works the way it does. And honestly, if citizens feel that there are better avenues, and there are better avenues, that they're in a position to make good decisions about it. I feel like right now it still kind of flies under the radar. The promise made it a big issue, but then because of the way Trudeau dealt with it, it actually hurt, I think, democracy in a way that it didn't need to.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to have conversations not just about, statistical models, which most people, are mystified by, and about, what is enabled by opening the system up in one way or another. And I think also we're in we really are in a situation where people are facing major challenges when they go to the grocery store. They're paying their electricity bills, as we've been hearing in this province. The median income in this province is $27.50 an hour. The living wage in this province is $25 an hour, and that tells you something about how close to that really challenging level of income many people are. We need to connect these things to bread and butter issues for people and show how what might look like an esoteric discussion among anthropologists and political scientists. And I think you can learn some things about how what seems only common sense could be different, and how things work. I'm making my plug for anthropology here now, since Kelly did. But yeah, no, I think we need to start talking about, not just in political science, theoretical kinds of models, but like, why does this matter on an everyday basis to people? And that's how we get people engaged.
The questions from the show, right? What does it mean to be Canadian? What is our system? Do we need another system? What does it mean to have thriving, vibrant communities? Where does childcare come into that, right? What are the conversations with Indigenous communities and partnerships across Canada? These are all issues that are there for this federal election that people can kind of think about, dig into. And you can still have your memes on Facebook, but also you can listen to this conversation and maybe read a little bit more. Like, it's all about trying to figure out how to inform ourselves to make the best possible decisions. We've got 3-4 minutes left. Any thoughts we haven't kind of tossed out into the public yet that you want to get to, or any kind of closing thoughts to wind things down? Rochelle?
I mean, just to kind of summarize the stuff that I've been thinking about in terms of this bigger question of what defines us as Canadians, a lot of these issues that we've been circling around just over the lunch hour here in terms of Indigenous rights and immigration, democratic rights, equity, inclusion, all of these things. 1982 was a year in Canada's history where Queen Elizabeth came over, signed into our Constitution the Charter of Rights and Freedoms along with Pierre Trudeau. And that, to me, it's an important reminder of everything, all the conversations that were being had before the Charter was signed into law, because we didn't have protected rights before that point in time. Everything that happened before that brought us to that point where, as a country, we made the decision that, it was important to enshrine multiculturalism. It was important to enshrine our desire to be a diverse and prosperous nation in that way. And so, now we're kind of in 2025 and we're having all these conversations around woke culture and, how immigration, we have a lot of Canadians who think that we have too much immigration. Well, our population's in decline, so we have to have people supporting our economy coming from somewhere. So it's either Indigenous peoples as some of the fastest growing populations, or we have immigration, right? Those are the ways that we are going to ensure that with our economy. But on the other side of it, it's also staying in tune with what we value as Canadians in terms of that charter agreement that we made.
Yolande, thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been trying to encourage people to do is just be ready when people come knocking on your door. So, we're going to have people, I hope they come to my door. I've got a list of questions. But you don't have to be know the ins and outs and the weeds of every issue. It's just important enough to say, this is an issue that matters to me. So if the issue of childcare and finding a childcare space for your family that's high quality and inclusive is something that matters to you, you got to let them know, right? We don't want to just let them. We let them know, and we're going to let them know when they come door to door. So, I would just encourage you not to be hesitant to do that.
Robin, 30 seconds.
Yep. I guess I'd just say slogans are not enough. We really need something more substantial than that. And one size fits all solution is not going to solve all or a single solution is not going to solve everything. We need more than, tax cut.
Qalipu.
Just to echo what Yolande was getting on about here as well, I think we need to be careful that we don't get too caught up in just one message or one approach. I think we need to be careful about the fact that we are sort of overloaded with messages from Trump and the way that they're framed. We should be looking instead for what it is that we care about. And finally, it's an election and it's one day or one period of time, but I'd like to think that people take this as an opportunity to think about democracy more broadly. Volatility as an opportunity for change. Go out and make that change.
Thank you, folks, for this conversation today. Kelly Blidook, Yolande Pottie-Sherman, Rochelle Côté, Robin Whitaker. Thank you so much, folks. If you want to get in touch with the show, The Signal at cbc.ca. Tomorrow on the show, we keep talking about building more housing, right? But how do we do it right? How do we make sure we do it right? Well, we've got folks coming in to talk about how to build more, but in a way that helps communities. We'll have different views and opinions on this issue. That's tomorrow. Thanks for listening.